walking, what's beautiful is you have no idea what to expect. The only thing to expect is that the walk will provide you with things that you didn't think about, challenges, but you can't anticipate anything. When people say, when they know that I walk, they say, did you walk the full Camino? And I tell everybody there's no such thing as a full Camino because of all the different paths, because your Camino is your Camino, whether you want to walk 3 days or 45 days. There are a lot of people around, but I think what taught me from walking the Camino was you can go inward. In other words, like, it could be a lot of distractions going on around me, buses, cars, people, but I can find that inner peace much more easily now than I did prior to the Camino. You learn to live small, and I've always designed myself to have a minimalist lifestyle. In fact, one of my favorite quotes as an artist was from Picasso, which was, I want to live like a poor man with money. I heard that quote when I was 16, and I kind of designed my whole life around that. So the expectations was to feel closer to God. I felt like I wanted to feel closer to the Father, and I felt as I was walking and when I would go into those little churches and spend time and pray in those churches, I felt the connection like I have never felt in my life.
Hello, Pilgrims. Welcome to another episode of The Way to Your Why podcast. Here is your host, Efrain Mendoza. And today we have with us James LaMantia. He is an artist and he has been working in different galleries from New York, Florida, and now North Carolina. So he has been also walked the Camino de Santiago. And we're going to be talking about his experience and then also about his experience with what he does as an artist. So welcome, James. How are you doing today?
I am fabulous, and I was so looking forward to this podcast. So thank you for having me as a guest.
Okay, yeah, no problem. Well, we just recently met at a Rotary Club a meeting that we have a few weeks ago. And I was there as a speaker, you mentioned, I walked the Camino de Santiago. And I say, why not invite him to our podcast? That way he can tell about his experience at the Camino.
Sure. And I recall coming up to you and giving you the secret handshake of showing you my memory of it, which is, I love that. Whenever I'm out and I have this exposed, I know who did the Camino because they come up and they say, Buen Camino.
yeah, that's absolutely right. Okay, so my first question. So when was that you walked the Camino?
It was spring. It was May of 2024.
2024. Mm-hmm. And what attracted you from the Camino that you say, I'm going to be walking that?
So I saw the movie The Way, like a lot of pilgrims, they find out about the Camino through that movie. And I believe I saw it about 11 years ago. And then I said to myself, this is so right up my alley. I have to do this. And then in researching it, initially I saw people were coming from France to Santiago, and it was daunting because I had owned at that time 3 fine art galleries, and I did not have a month or a month and a half to walk. So fast forward, years passed, but it was always on my radar. I guess a year and a half ago, I said, I'm going to put it down. I'm going to give myself two weeks, like 13 days of walking and a couple of days of travel. And it put me in the center of Spain in León. And I walked from León to Santiago in last spring.
Okay. How was that experience?
It was, you hear the term life altering or life changing. For me, it truly was because having been raised in New York, mostly on Long Island, but I lived in Manhattan for years as well. You learn to live small. And I've always designed myself to have a minimalist lifestyle. In fact, one of my favorite quotes as an artist was from Picasso, which was, I want to live like a poor man with money. I heard that quote when I was 16, and I kind of designed my whole life around that. So when I was walking, I was kind of at the end of my career. I was deciding on winding down some of the galleries and focusing on my art. And then I realized for those 13 days of walking, every day I walked, I was living on about 50 euros a day, perhaps, sometimes less, which gave me plenty of food, drink, place to stay, meeting unbelievable people. And it was such a happy lifestyle that when I came back from that, I made the decision to just go into simplify mode. I'm an art dealer, so I still sell my art and other artists' work. but I decided to retire as a result of it. So it was truly a life-altering event for me.
Okay. So now you can walk other caminos as well.
I haven't, because I started in León. I think I'm going back in the spring, and I'm going to be walking backwards to France.
Okay.
So maybe do a week at a time. So I plan to go from León through the Meseta, and just eventually get back to the starting point, but not go in the other direction. Go maybe 100 miles prior and then end at León, and then 100, and then eventually end up back in France.
Okay. Well,
I don't want to walk again. I don't want to swim against the tide, if you get my drift.
Okay. Well, now that you are retired, because you are still very young, you're going to have time to do one every year.
Absolutely. I mean, even here, I find myself walking a lot more. I live in downtown Raleigh, so I really, again, to the point of the Camino, I have a lease running up on my car. I'm not renewing the lease. I like to walk everywhere or use public transportation when I can. I ran my first marathon 2 weeks ago at the age of 62. These are all milestones from doing the Camino.
Yeah, and everything is related. And here in North Carolina, we have a lot of greenways, a lot of places to walk. So
absolutely,
it's fabulous.
Yep.
Okay. And then when you walk that Camino, that 2 weeks that you were there, something that you remind, that you say, wow, this was something amazing to see or to experience, something that you can tell.
I would say two things. One was I enjoyed the little villages more than the cities. So from León to Santiago, I think we were in 3 major cities, and for the most part, little villages. And what really moved me was when you would walk through a little village of maybe a couple of hundred people, the little churches that you would come across, with 3 pews. And that those churches were there for hundreds of years. I found myself, when I walked, spending so much time in those churches and feeling a spiritual connection to God and to my religion. And that, I'm getting goosebumps as I'm sharing it. That to me was some of the most memorable points. Those little villages where, people's faith were based around that little church. And also for me, it brought me out of my shell to an extent that I'm a very reserved person, even though I've been in the public a lot through different charities that I work with. I tend to like to be alone. But on the Camino, after 3 days, I found myself with my Camino family and having dinner with them every night. And I never walked with anybody, but for the most part, but I enjoyed looking forward to that time with them each evening. And that was a big change in my life, honestly. And I've actually brought that forward to here back in the States now. I do that a lot more than I ever would.
Yeah. It's different how people, when they're walking the Camino, have time to share with everyone and to talk a lot. Mm-hmm. Because you can be walking for an hour and you're talking with the other person, and you don't get tired of the other person talking to you. Mm-hmm. It's everything interesting, and you wanted to know more, and the other person want to know more from you. Sure. So here, when we have a busy life, that's different.
Understood. And and the way that those interactions came about for me were interesting too. I remember we were in a small village at the top going over the Galician mountains, and I have a little bit of a fear of dogs, from something that happened in my childhood of being attacked by a dog. So I was in this village, and there were a lot of big German shepherds around. And I remember that night meeting a number of people, but that morning I saw Carlos, who was from Brazil, 6'4", a professor. And I said to him, Carlos, would you mind if I walked out of the village with you? Because I'm afraid of the perros.
Okay.
All right, am I saying that? And he said, absolutely. From that point on, I still speak to Carlos maybe once a month.
Okay.
But that friendship came out of, would you walk with me? Because I'm nervous walking past these dogs. Of course, the dogs didn't want anything to do with us, but a great friendship came out from it.
Okay. Another question I have for you, because you live in New York and you live in Manhattan, you know that's the city, a big city, and everything is very, very busy all the time. So sure. Traffic in people and traffic also in cars. So it's traffic anywhere. And what can you say that what you learn on the Camino, you can apply that knowledge for living in a city like New York, for example? What can you take advantage of an experience like from the Camino, like for living in a city?
Well, I think that, and even in Raleigh, I mean, Raleigh can be busy where I am downtown. There are a lot of people around, but I think what taught me from walking the Camino was you can go inward. In other words, like it could be a lot of distractions going on around me, buses, cars, people, but I can find that inner peace much more easily now than I did prior to the Camino. And that was just all the time walking and observing and observing. I met, if I could share a quick little story, something cool that happened. A friend of mine that I met along the way, Mary Kay, we met a gentleman, a local in a small village, and he said to us, "Is this your first walk of the Camino?" We both said yes, and he said, "You're going." He just said flat out, "You're going to walk it again." And we said, "Why?" He said, "Because you're going too fast." And what I got from that and what he meant from that and what I've taken from that is I've learned to slow down and appreciate more as a result of it. So even when I'm walking, to your point, on the Greenway, I'm not always walking past those streams. That I stop and I observe them and I look and I listen and I feel connected to it. And I think no matter where you are in a big city, in a small village, you have that opportunity to do that because it's all around you. You just have to look for it.
That's totally correct. You with the Camino, and the Camino not necessarily is in Spain. It's here as well.
Absolutely.
Even outside of your house, you just go out to the street and you just see around. One movie that I actually like it is, I don't know if you have watched it or not, Love Actually. That what I like about the movie is that,
Yes, you just told me about that.
yes,
I did watch it.
yeah, there are times when they are watching people on the airport, and you see how people is so excited when they just meet each other at the airport. So the life should be like that every moment, not
Bingo.
just at the airport and not just in the Camino.
Bingo. Well, very well said.
Yes. So, and then well, you see what the particularity with the Camino is that when someone walk the Camino and connect with another person that has walked the Camino, it's like that. And an example that I always provide to the people that I'm talking to. So when I went to the gathering in Canada, there were a lot of pilgrims. And you see the joy of everyone, the excitement, and they all were singing, and it was a lot of noise around it, but positive noise.
Yeah.
And that's a real life when you're working, it's not like that usual. And sometimes you stress more than you should.
100%. Yeah. 100%.
Yes. So what you can tell people that when you are at the work environment, you can use that experience that you learn in the Camino at the work environment to make it easier for you, but always also to comply with your goals as well.
I mean, right now, because I'm sort of retired, I'm not interacting with people as much in a work environment, but I can tell you in a day-to-day environment where I'm coming up against something, I just go back to the peacefulness that I felt on the Camino, and that just appreciating people for who they are. And it's almost a stoic philosophy as well. It's not the situation, it's how I react to the situation. And I think the Camino also taught me that when you came across adversity when you were walking, it was not the adversity that caused you pain, it was how you reacted to it. And I learned that every day that I walked. So I think I still use that today in interactions. If I come into a stressful situation here, I bring myself back to how am I going to respond to this and find a nice, peaceful place. And honestly, it's worked out. It's not 100%, but I go to it very often. It's sort of in my back pocket as something I can go to and help me find that peace.
Yeah, it helps. And then it's not like the Camino is easy. The Camino, you're going to have some challenges there because sometimes you're going to need to go to a hill that is like that. And so, or a hill that is you're going down, that is also difficult because people say, oh, because it's going down, it's not difficult. No, it's difficult too.
More difficult.
Yeah.
I found it more difficult actually going down than going up.
Yeah, and then it may be raining a lot and you still cannot do anything. You need to walk.
Sure.
So, but you enjoy those moments. Very nice.
Yeah, and you know what I think it teaches you, because so I had trained quite a bit for this, and from running to hiking to finding it. So at the time before I went, I was living in Florida. Florida is not known for elevation changes, but I found a spot where I could walk up and down to prepare myself. And even at that, I felt the physical challenges. About a week in, I felt it. But you learn to deal with it. I think those adversities help you to overcome little things here that, well, two things. One, adversities here that was with physical things. You go, you know what, I did that, I can do this. You know, I walked over those mountains. This is nothing. Even when I ran the marathon a couple of weeks ago, when I started to feel pain or feeling tired, I remembered myself, you know, where at some point on the Camino, and it gave me that energy. So all of that stuff, again, just like finding the peace, we can find the strength from the adversities that we dealt with through the walking.
Okay. Now, talking about your artist passion, because that's a passion for you, because you've been doing this for years and years. And then you go in 2024 to the Camino. How would you relate art and the Camino?
So art's been my whole life. When I was 9 years old, I told my mother I want to open an art gallery when I get older. So that's all I've done. I mean, I went to art school, managed a gallery in Manhattan for 5 years before opening my own when I was 26. And that was 36 years ago. But so I had been painting in my studio. And when I came back from the Camino, all of a sudden cherubs appeared in my work. Cherubs were everywhere for almost a year after coming back. I found, you know, what you experienced there came through in my art, and I still have a number of those pieces. But it's interesting, you know, as an artist, what you experience will come out in your work. And for that year past, it was cherubs, and it slowly developed where the cherubs have become more abstract now and still figures. But I noticed it immediately, and through the WhatsApp, I would send photos of my artwork to my Camino family all around the world. And they were like, they couldn't believe the influence of the pilgrimage on my art.
Yeah. And while you were walking the Camino, all those landscaping that you were seeing around, is anything in particular that impact you? Or maybe several as well.
Well, I would say two things. One, I loved walking before the sun was up. So for me, seeing the sun come up over the landscapes was very important. I don't think there was a single day that I got out, maybe one day, maybe two, where I got out when the sun was already up. I wanted to be in the landscape, in the environment, and see the sun and how that sun affected the colors, the atmosphere, the dew, everything. It was remarkable. So for me, sunrises were very, very important. And then, of course, the sunset, where you can reflect on the day's event and just see the change from that morning to the night. But overall, I mean, for me, what was probably the most inspiring is where when you start out at León, it's still pretty flat, but you could see the mountains in the distance, and you know you're walking to that. And as they got closer and closer and closer until you were finally climbing up, hiking up over them, that was also, to me, very memorable.
Yeah, and also the nice part about that you are walking, you have plenty of time to appreciate it. Because it's different when you're going by car, that you're going so fast. But walking, you have enough time to appreciate it.
Yeah, what I tried to do, I made a conscious effort not to have my phone out. Not that I would have been in contact with the States and people, but to take a lot of photos. Like, I took photos, but probably not as many as most people may. I took photos when there was something that really moved me, but I wanted to be in the moment. And I said part of that experience was also to just, disappear, to go off the grid as much as possible, which prior to the Camino I did once or twice a year anyway. Like I would go away where there was no internet, no phone service, to force me to maybe perhaps prepare for the Camino. But I wanted to just experience it. And, by looking at it through the phone, I wanted to try to put that away. And I felt like in the long run, it really benefited me.
Yeah. And then when you walk that Camino, when you start walking, and then what were your expectations were before start walking? Did the Camino satisfy all your expectation, or were a lot above better?
I think a lot better, more so. So the expectations was to feel closer to God. I felt like I wanted to feel closer to the Father. And I felt as I was walking and when I would go into those little churches and spend time and pray in those churches, I felt the connection like I had never felt in my life. Having accomplished the walk and seeing my friends in Santiago and the emotion and the tears and the hugs. And one of our friends stayed an extra day because she didn't get sleep and we were afraid she wasn't going to be there when we all got there. She walked 2 stages to make sure she was there when we were all there in Santiago, and seeing her come in and giving her a big hug and remembering that, again, goosebumps. It was just, it far exceeded what I thought I would get out of it. Again, it made me come to the decision that it's time for me to focus solely on my work and not be in the galleries anymore. So it had major impacts in my life.
Yeah, well, that's good. And what would you say to someone that is considering to walk the Camino but haven't not decided to do it? What would you say to that person?
I'm so glad you asked me that, because I would say to them, don't think of it the way I thought of it 11 years ago. When people say, when they know that I walk, they say, did you walk the full Camino? And I tell everybody there's no such thing as a full Camino because of all the different paths, because your Camino is your Camino, whether you want to walk 3 days or 45 days. I think that it's a daunting task to say, oh, can I get a month off from the world to walk? And I tell people, don't think of it like that. I have a very dear friend here in Raleigh. I think her and her daughter walked 3 or 4 days through Portugal. And that experience for them was as life-changing or memorable as it was for me, who walked 13 days, or my friends who walked 30 days. If you're thinking of walking, don't put any pressures on yourself. There's no such thing as a full Camino. Or it's like, did you run a full marathon or a half marathon? For those who run a half marathon, I think less than 1% of the population can run 13.1 miles. It's nothing. It's not half of anything, if that makes sense. Just if you want to do it, get it, and because you can always go back. That's the big thing.
Yeah, that's totally accurate. And then you can even walk. Let's say you can walk, you start walking and you think that you're gonna be walking, let's say, a week, and you find there, but then something happened, and you just can walk 3 days, and the other 3 days you need to go by taxi. That's fine too. You accomplished that. You have the opportunity to be there, and you appreciated that.
Right. Yeah. And people will send their luggage ahead, their backpacks ahead, and meet in the next village. There's nothing wrong with that. If your body physically will be able to walk better and more efficiently without the backpack, there's nothing wrong with that. Like no one looks down. Oh, you sent your bags ahead. So what? Yeah. You were free and you had a good, the one thing I think about the Camino is there were no, although I'll say something a little funny, maybe a little, I don't want to say controversial. There is no wrong Camino. Although I would say when the bikers came past us, people on bikers, I did hear the walker say, Pilgrim on a bike. I always thought that was hysterical. Pilgrims don't bike. But again, it's their Camino. It's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. And then talking about the Camino with the bikes, it happened also here in the US. When you're walking in a trail, that you're walking, and somehow you see it very quick that the bike is coming. So you just need to go on the side.
That's all. It's funny.
Yeah. Well, that's true. And then, so do you have anything in particular, beside the stories that you mentioned, that you wanted to share with us about the Camino? Anything else?
I think, no, the only, yes, if you've been thinking about it, do it, because no one's getting any younger. I mean, I'm 62. At this point, our bodies, it becomes more challenging to do these things. So if you're thinking about it and you're on the younger side, do it. Don't put it off. Again, it doesn't have to be a big stretch, but don't put it off. If you're thinking of it, trust your instincts. And I think that you will be rewarded emotionally and spiritually for doing it.
Okay. So how would you say that a Camino will transform a life in general? So what would you say about that?
It takes you out of your comfort zone. I mean, every day we wake up, and for the most part, our day is scripted. Like when we wake up, I mean, we know what to expect that day. Whether you're working, whether you know exactly. Like I have now that I'm back here, I have my morning routine. I do it every single day, and it's all right. But when you're walking, what's beautiful is you have no idea what to expect. The only thing to expect is that the walk will provide you with things that you didn't think about, challenges, but you can't anticipate anything. I think that is the most important, well, one of the most important things about the Camino is that it's going to give you the luxury of just waking up and saying, I don't know what the day is going to be. Where 99% of our days, we know what that day looks like. On the Camino, every day is different, and I think that's brilliant.
Yeah. I have one person that I interview in the podcast, probably 20 episodes before this one. And she say that the Camino is all those vacations that you have in several months, but here in the Camino, you have in one day, you have plenty of vacations in just one day. What would you say about that?
I like that. I would agree, again, because of the unexpected. I mean, I saw things there that I would never have seen here. But also just the feeling of the peace. Again, it goes back to me, the peace that when you're on vacation, people on vacation, generally, it's to get away from work. It's to get away from the hustle and bustle and to find that peace. Every day you find peace, but on so many different levels. So to her point, it's many vacations just compressed into one.
Okay. And then regarding the stays, you were staying in albergues or in private hotels?
Albergues, with the exception of 3 nights where I needed to get a really good night's sleep. And then I would stay in, I mean, it was none, there were hotels, but they're not hotels like we think. I mean, it was still €50 for the night. And half the times I didn't have hot water, but there were 3 nights where it was raining and I needed a good night's sleep and I would stay there. But all the other times were in donativos or albergues. Yeah. In fact, one of the best experiences was, they say, book your first 3 nights and then let the Camino provide. Well, I booked my first 3 nights, and on the 4th night, I got to a village and they were like, sorry, we have no room. And what? And I ended up staying in a monastery, a donativo for the night. And it was awesome because, again, I knew where I was going to stay. It forced me to go out of my comfort zone. And that night, it was my 4th night that's when I met most of my Camino family that I ended up. So out of that adversity, something beautiful came out of it. But I think in hindsight, if I were to do it again, I would probably plan more of my stays. So I knew exactly where I stayed. But every night I loved the challenge of sleeping, with 25 other people in a room. And also because I'm a bit of a germaphobe, back to how the Camino changes you, it forced me to address a fear that I have. And I did fine. You manage.
Okay. So what about, so do you feel safe while you were walking the Camino?
100%. I never once felt unsafe. Not once. Never. Okay. And I think, I don't know why there's that, I don't know if the word is misnomer out there where, oh, it's dangerous, something. I didn't, and I can't tell you how many single people I saw walking, and every one of them was like, yeah, not a problem. No, never felt nervous at all. Not once.
How about the locals people? How you find about locals? What you can say about them?
They were remarkable. And I'll tell you where in particular. I found in the villages, the locals were much more welcoming than in the big cities. So the 3 big cities that I went through, it's a city. You know, like when you're in Italy, if you're in Rome or you're in Siena, you get a different vibe in Siena than you do Rome. I felt the villages, because in a way their economics, in a sense, is based around the Camino too. But they were welcoming. Even the older people always welcomed Buen Camino when you're walking through. I felt always welcome in the smaller cities. When you're in the major cities like León or Astorga or Sarria, it's hustle bustle. But again, all very nice, but it's more of a city vibe.
Well, that's really good. Well, so James, so we are getting to the end of the conversation today. Anything else that you would like to add to the conversation?
No, just again, based on my experience, if you were thinking of doing it, do it. Reach out to someone like myself or yourself who's done it, because we can share. Like, I got a lot of information from a woman who lives here in Raleigh who had walked it twice. There are little things, little tips that she shared with me that made such a difference on my pilgrimage, that go to people like us, because we have those little tips that will come in very handy when you're walking.
Yeah, well, thank you for that advice. And then this is also the idea of having the podcast and inviting pilgrims, because everybody knows different things that can help you when you were planning your pilgrimage. So that way you know more about that.
Absolutely.
Okay. So thank you very much, James, for being here today. And thank you very much, pilgrims, for watching us. And please keep adding your comments on the comment sections. That way we know what other topics would you like to see in a future episode. Thank you, and buen camino.
Buen Camino.